Welcome back to My Spoonie Sisters. And today, we are thrilled to welcome Emma to My Spoonie Sisters. Emma is an incredible illustrator and advocate who uses her creativity as a powerful tool for healing. Diagnosed with epilepsy at 23, she has channeled her journey into art, therapy, and self-discovery. Emma is also a personal trainer and co-author of the #1 bestseller, Beyond the Ordinary. Discover the power of creative and neurodiverse women. She's here to share her story, talk about raising awareness for epilepsy, and explore the diverse coping mechanisms that she has embraced. So let's dive in and learn more about her inspiring journey. Hi, Emma, and welcome. How are you today?
Good, thank you. I tend to go off on tangents and forget the question, so this could be interesting.
It can be interesting, but you know what? I'm here for it, and I think Andy is too. We're excited to chat with you and hear all about you. Do you mind telling us your diagnosis story?
I got diagnosed at 23, but I think I actually had epilepsy maybe a year or so before that, but wasn't aware of what it was because I've only ever thought of epilepsy as one kind of thing in a very ignorant sense. I was very ignorant of my own condition because I didn't know that there were so many different types of seizures. So when I was diagnosed, I had like a build up over quite a few years of having these little weird moments, I would say, where I would be at work or somewhere familiar and I feel like I'm having deja vu, which sounds like a really everyone has that, but it's the different level of deja vu. And I thought, it's probably because I've been here before. It's a bit strange. And then I kept having some weird things going on in my eyes. And I was like, feels a bit odd. So I went to the dietitians and then they did a check of my eyes. Your eyes got something's a bit wrong. So we're going to send you back to the doctors and the doctor's going to refer you to the hospital. And this goes back and forth. Long story short, that wasn't anything. I was still like, well, what's the problem then? I was like, these things are still happening and it's still really bothering me. Like, can I have another opinion? So I went back to the GP and he sent me to a neurologist. Oh my God, I can't even remember the name. And he didn't get back to me until like 9 months later because the waiting list is so long. Obviously, because it's of the NHS, it's, you get seen when you get seen. And if it's not that important, as in I'm not like a kind of person that would drop to the floor, have fits and hit myself or anything. So I was low risk at that stage. Went into that appointment with my mum. First 5 minutes I was in there, he diagnosed me like that. And all I remember him doing is looking into my eyes with a telescope, one of those weird, I don't even know what they're called, things. He tapped my knees and he was seeing my reflexes. And then he goes, yeah, you've got epilepsy. And this is after me saying the symptoms. And I thought, what do you mean? I was like, I don't have epilepsy. I definitely don't. I don't drop to the floor or anything. I just feel a bit funny. I thought I was just going to then go home and he'd tell me, you need to do some like meditation or something. As in, I wasn't expecting you've got epilepsy. He was like, what? The leading up to that is in the 9 months that I was waiting. When I went to Sri Lanka after I'd graduated from university, I did the typical, oh my God, I'm going to go like help and be a volunteer in another country because apparently that's what all British people love to do. So went to Sri Lanka, volunteered with a friend. It was there that I was more worried than I'd ever been because every other time I'd had an episode of deja vu, I was in a place that I'd been with before around people that I'd known. So I thought it's just deja vu. That was the time that I was in a country I've never been to, surrounded by a group of people that I've never met. And I fully had a meltdown and panicked. I was like, oh my God, this isn't right. Something's not right. Really not right. I went full panic mode, sweating, freaking out, had to be taken away from everyone, sat down, like, are you okay? So, I don't know. It lasted for like a good 5 to 10 minutes. And then I was fine. Went to the hospitals out there. They said, wait till you get home. You've got like an appointment. It'll be okay. Then obviously 9 months later, they're like, yeah, that was a seizure. You were having a seizure. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a seizure. They're like, yeah, there's 40 plus different types of epilepsy and they do not look the same. Everyone thinks of just the one because that's the one where you mostly get hurt. Obviously, you have to think about how to make sure you're safe. The deja vu one didn't add up to me because I'd never heard of it. And why would I? I was completely oblivious to that even being a thing with any condition, if you've never heard of it, why would you know about it? I found out when I was 23, and everything kind of went a bit downhill from there, not gonna lie. I was very overwhelmed with the diagnosis because I'd been driving since I was 17, and that day they had to take away my license. So the independence of myself was kind of lost. I was like, how am I going to get to work? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Like, I was very much like, but I've always been very independent as a person. I drove to and from uni all the time, even though it was like an hour and a half drive. For England, that's really far, by the way. I feel like it's not the same in America. It was, and I always drove myself to work. I did my own shopping. I lived with my parents, but I still did everything for myself. And I felt like I was back at school being like, Mum, can you take me to work? I was like, I feel like a child. I hated it. That was a bit of a spiral into like depression, anxiety things. See, then started with medication. Ironically, since I was diagnosed, the epilepsy got worse. Then I did start to have seizures where I collapsed. One of the most memorable ones was my boyfriend and I had just been to the gym. We left and he was about to drive me home, to be at home by myself, which is why it's a bit scary. And went to get in the car and he was like, are you okay? I was like, no. He said, that's the first time I'd ever said no. Because I normally go, no, I'm good. Like, because I'll just try to brush it off and it's fine, whatever. But I went, no. It's like, he went like white as a sheet and he went round the car to catch me or ask if I was okay. I completely dropped to the floor, said that my legs were like stiff and which sounds horrible and precious and not a nice one. All I remember was saying no. I remember having a dream about unicorns, which is hilarious, I think. Because I was there like, in my own little bubble, completely unconscious, like, having a great time. And that's suddenly here. Emma, we're here. Emma, okay, can you hear us? And they go, sir, am I having a nap? Completely disassociated the situations with each other. I woke up to ambulance team, paramedics around me, my boyfriend there, and they're going, oh my God, I was like, what are you doing? And I said, oh no, you didn't need to call them. I'm fine. He's like, no, you're not. You just dropped to the floor. I was like, yeah, but that sometimes happens. It's fine. Like, it's not over 5 minutes. You don't need to call anyone. He was terrified because he'd never seen me actually have a seizure in person. I think for him, it's more like the panic of that. And the first thing he thought to do was just collapse to the floor, ambulance straight away. Luckily, they were like 5 minutes down the road. It's just lucky they were there, because otherwise that would have been like a couple of hours and I would have recovered, as it were. They checked my bloods and did everything. And I said, I'll speak to the neurologist, whatever. But they were more worried about him than they were about me, because he looked so shocked at seeing me so vulnerable and completely unresponsive that he was terrified. He was like, I've actually thought you might have died. And then he was like, well, but then you were moving. So I was like, it's fine. So I ran inside and so he tripped over the step getting into the house because he was panicking. I mean, bless him. He was absolutely brilliant. But I was like, do you want to take him into the hospital and not me? Like, it's fine. It was just very awkward. The reason I remember that is that's the time I realised, because you physically see it, how much my diagnosis affected other people. Because I don't see it, I didn't really think anything of it. Not anything of it. There were a lot of emotional attachments and things like that. But physically seeing him like that freaked me out, because I was like, do I actually look that bad? Like, is it really that bad? Because I'm there going, I'm asleep, basically, it feels like, and then I wake up. That's just that whole in between is not, yeah. So that's happened for like a number of years or whatever. But that was obviously quite a few years in. Question was that, how do I get into illustration from that, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I want to interject for just a second. I think, and Andy, I don't know if you have any experience with this as well, but I think if you're experiencing it yourself, and of course this depends on the kind of seizure, right? You don't see what you look like. You don't see what's going on. And so for those around you, like he was, absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. They're not used to seeing you in such a way. It just, kudos to him for not falling flat on his face, you know?
I feel also because I'd spoken about it and he'd never seen it. It was almost like just a thing. It just didn't matter. Not didn't matter, but it hadn't been a thing in our relationship, because at that point I think we'd only been together like a year or so. I remember the first date we went on, my mum said, tell him you have epilepsy in case something happens. Picked me up in his car and I said, just to let you know, I have epilepsy. So if anything happens that's a bit weird, please call my mum. Like, showed him like my phone thing. I was like, you know what, if that happens, it happens. Because I was very open about it. It was only till about a year, 2 years in, that he'd actually seen me have a seizure where I collapsed. I think that's why it was such a shock, because he'd seen me so normal, whatever that means. It'd been a very weird experience for him to suddenly see me as this really vulnerable person. It's very difficult, because obviously we built a relationship over that time, and it wasn't just like going on a date one time, doesn't matter. It was like fully invested into relationship. And he's like, oh my God, now I realize how terrifying this is. Whereas if I said that on the first date and I'd had a seizure, he'd probably been like, nope, no way, because it is terrifying and it's not really nice. Well, you don't really have to disclose it. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, but I can't lie to people. And it's such a massive part of my life now that I'm like, it is what it is. If you like it, you like it, or if you don't, you have to like it, but it is a part of me and I've accepted that.
Definitely. It's a part of who you are. And if people want to be part of your life, they need to accept all of who you are. Andy, do you have anything to chime in? Hey, listeners, are you living with a chronic illness and want to make your voice heard? Rare Patient Voice connects patients and caregivers with research opportunities so you can share your experiences and get paid for your time. Your insights help drive real change in healthcare. So sign up today using the link in our show notes and start making an impact.
I do. I like to throw the monkey wrenches in early. I have a question because I know that the people that care for us, they freak out when something happens that they haven't normally seen or experienced, and we live it. Do you think perhaps maybe the boyfriend, perhaps, were freaking out because he was so used to you seeing you fine as a description? I'm fine, but what that fine really looks like, you know what I'm saying? Fine to us, I'm fine. We use it all the time, but fine to us in the big scheme of things really isn't fine to the average person. It's just our everyday norm. So if they don't live a life with chronic illness and they're just the supporting cast, I think it freaks them out, because what does fine really actually even mean for real? If we're like, no, I'm fine, it's fine, whatever. The doctor's office was trash. This appointment was trash, but it's fine. I feel like garbage, but it's fine. Ouch, that hurts, but I'm fine. Oh no, I've had a full-blown seizure. I took a nap though. Hey guys, why is everybody staring at me? It's really fine. And he's like, well, wait a minute. You've been fine all these other times and it did not end up with you on the floor. This time, fine looked different. For me, it was my heart attack. Mine was, hey, I'm fine. And then bam, whole cardiac arrest. That's it. Dead. 38 minutes. I told people that day I was fine. I had literally just told somebody I was fine. I wasn't. I was overwhelmed. My chest hurt. I hadn't slept. I was in the middle of a flare. And then I was dead. Craziness.
That's quite massive. Also, I love the way you just described it as like they're the co-supporting act kind of thing to us. I think that's a really brilliant way to look at it, because you are kind of the main person of your life. I think it's quite good to remember that you don't have to cover that. Just make sure everyone else is fine, like they're the main part of the show. Like you are in your own life. Ironically, when I talk about that time, I genuinely was fine. I think that's what scared me too, because normally if I'd have a flare up of seizures, it would be because I was really, really stressed. Haven't slept, or I hadn't taken my medication. I'd done all those things. I'd also eaten, drunk enough water, and gone to the gym. I genuinely felt fine. And I think that was the shock. If I had had a focal seizure, which is where, I don't know if you know what focal seizure is, but for the purpose of this, is when you're fully conscious, but you still have the feeling of deja vu, as it were. You kind of, for me, I personally become mute, and it can be known as an absent seizure, but it's dependent on what part of the brain. I'm no neurologist, so don't quote me on that. If I'm having a focal seizure, I'll just go, okay. And if someone says anything to me, I'll just say, If you know me, that means I'm not good. So he'd seen me with those kind of seizures, and they'd never built up to anything like that where he'd been present. Normally, for me, at that time, a focal seizure would then turn into a seizure. I'd collapse. So it was more like the pre-panic before the actual show. And I'd be like, brilliant. So I think that's why I would get so panicky. Now, because it's been a few years later, when I don't have that's a whole other story. It's like, so he'd know if I hadn't slept and I'd been tired, I'd be like, if I had a focus seizure, I'm like, I'm going to bed. I'm not risking this. I'm having a nap. I don't want it to get to that point. But it's interesting, like where you said that you can say you're fine when you're really not fine, because it's a full on masking thing. You pretend like everything's okay, but you don't want to make either other people feel uncomfortable or to get in your own head about, am I going to cause something if I think about it too much? Or am I going to get too wound up? And then that in itself is going to like cause some kind of stress. It's going to cause, like in my case, to have a seizure, and for your case, to have a heart attack, which is like very extreme. And for people that don't have like a chronic illness or anything like that, they're like, how did it get to that point? Or like, well, you should just calm down, or you should just whatever. And you're there going, yeah, I don't really know how to explain it unless you've been through it, because it's not like you're doing it on purpose. You're not there going, you know what, I really fancy going to hospital today. I would really love a trip. It'd be great. You know what, I really just want someone to just, I'll lie in bed and people bring me food while I feel absolutely rubbish. It's not that. It's there going, just make sure it goes away. Just don't panic about it. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. And it's like the constant reminder in your head. Obviously, people do say that mind over matter or whatever, but in some cases, it doesn't bloody work. It only works to a certain extent. It is what it is. You can only learn to cope with that and the after effects and dealing with that in that sense. So that's very overwhelming at times, what I'd say. I think I've struggled with the most is learning to cope with that and to allow myself to, instead of bullying myself for not living up to expectations of my previous self or of other people, which is a hard task to master, really.
Definitely. You explained it really well. Sometimes we think we're totally fine and we start out the day fine, but it might not end that way. We need to pay attention to that and regroup ourselves throughout the day to see where we're at and make sure we really are fine. But then again, sometimes that unfine feeling comes out of nowhere. What's the backup plan for when that happens? We need a backup plan.
I also think with that kind of thing, as I've grown to understand my condition, I've learned how I can cope with it. As in, initially, I'd be trying to push myself in the same sense of trying to do everything I used to do and having that expectation of myself. And now I know what I can and can't do. I've had the trial and error experience. I know what works and what doesn't work. I've also tried different medications and all that kind of stuff, but it's more of the understanding yourself better. It's like relearning how you work and relearning how to adapt to what actually is good for you, and what used to be good for you might not be good for you anymore. Or you used to like do all the time, like even working how many days a week or being awake for like a certain amount of hours and not needing as much sleep or things like that. You have to learn, okay, is this worth having, in my head, is this worth having a seizure for? I'll go, no, it's not worth it. If I'm worried about it, it's in my head, I'm panicky, I won't do something. However, it's also then learning to cope with the not getting in your head so much and going, you're actually fine. You just need to make sure that you feel secure or safe and not do as much up to the building up to that thing. Try not to worry about it as much, which is easier said than done. People say, no, just don't worry about it. But it has to be you that genuinely feels like you don't worry about it, because it's not that simple. It's just really getting to know yourself again. The whole new version of you, it definitely is different for people that have been diagnosed since birth, because that's their norm. Not that that makes it any easier. I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that when I was diagnosed when I was 23, I had a norm, and then the norm had just gone. That's just, I had these expectations of being back to where I was. That really shook me. You used to be able to do like, you can't do that. You used to be able to do that, and it's the missing and longing for that old, healthier version of me, which was, it's been a tough pill to swallow. I think I'm getting there, and I'm definitely a lot further down the line than I was. It's a positive.
That is a positive.
Living with a rare disease or chronic illness can feel isolating, but you are not alone. Find Your Rare is more than just a brand. It's a movement. From empowering apparel to real, raw conversations, they're here to remind you that your story matters. Because being rare, it's your superpower. Explore, join, and wear your rare with pride at findyourrare.com.
What would you say has been the most difficult and the most fun part of you dating yourself to rediscover you? Because we kind of sit in the, hey, this is my normal has changed. But then it's like the exploration phase of, but I can still do these things. What has been the most fun thing that you've discovered that you can still do? You just learned how to do differently. And then what has been the most challenging part of learning you to date you so that you can feel safe with you all the time?
The way you worded that, the whole liking yourself again, I've never thought of it in that kind of way. And that's a really lovely way to kind of put it, because it is learning about yourself and you are dating yourself. It's a whole new feeling. The thing that has been the most positive is that I've started my own business, and I wouldn't have done that unless I was really pushed to do it. And I was thinking that'll be me a lot later on in life, after I've had kids and after I've worked for someone else and done all that. I was thinking, yeah, that'll be the good time. I'll do that then, because I've always wanted to work for myself. But because life became a lot harder and it's not very easy to find a full-time job that allows for people that have epilepsy, no matter what they say, I always know the answer is because you can't fit into whatever they need from you at that particular job. I've been pushed to do the thing that I always wanted to do a lot sooner. And I'm quite grateful for that in a way, because I've learned more about that now. So I actually have a lot more knowledge for the future in terms of that. And also found out that that's something I really thrive in doing, and also makes me incredibly calm. So it actually helps with coping. So I think that's really kind of come together in some kind of like fate way, which I wouldn't have expected really. And if I'd have done it without having epilepsy, I don't think some of the stuff I create, well, it wouldn't have been as informed, but I feel it's more of a purpose now because I have a message to give and a story to tell. Whereas if it was just like I wanted to become an illustrator, it's like, here's some nice pictures. Let's be honest, that's still a hard job. It's quite hard to keep up with, the market and whatever. And that stuff I do still enjoy. I'm not disputing that, but it's the fact that I now feel that when I've done illustrations based around epilepsy or sharing and kind of helping to educate through the drawing or whatever, I get messages saying on Instagram saying, I experienced that and I'm so glad you shared that. So many people share the illustrations, and it helps me feel not so alone. The fact that I've helped others people feel not so alone, it's way more rewarding than just a nice picture.
Do you think it's because now when you do it and it's like awareness driven, you are creating from a space of acceptance and it is being received in a space of acceptance and you feel safe? You're like, I can do this all day. This does not feel like work. I am calm. You're reminding yourself you're safe because it's your journey, but it's helping to educate other people that may be along the way. I think that's beautiful that there's acceptance of us along the journey as we meet the people in our community when we were scared to speak up at first to go, hey, I have this thing or this may be going on. And we'd be like, I'm fine. It's fine. If I have this thing, it's like our dirty little secret, but it's not really a secret, but don't look at me differently. And then we find our people and maybe you were just drawing a picture because one day you just felt like it was heavy on you. You're like, if I could put it into an image, this is what I feel. And that image told a whole story to someone who also felt that way. And it started the circle of acceptance in a community that is not often seen or accepted or valued. I am grateful for you and your talent, and that you decided that one day this was going to be the thing that was going to help you heal and keep you calm. I love that you decided to pay it forward.
Yeah. I don't think I realized it was a journey of acceptance, because the reason I started drawing about having epilepsy in my experience is because when I was in hospital, I had surgery. It wasn't for my brain. I'm going to say this quickly, hopefully. My brain would sometimes stop my heart from beating because of the seizures. So I had to have a pacemaker put in, which was to basically just in case, which I'm very privileged to be able to do that, because not a lot of people can get a pacemaker that quickly. The turnaround was very slow, very, very swift. But it was the being in hospital alone, isolated for 7 days before was lonely. And because it was during COVID period, no one could come and visit and nothing was broken up for the day. I could call people. I tried to read, tried to distract myself. But the thing that actually made me feel most calm was weirdly drawing about what I was going through, because it felt like, even if I didn't share it, it felt like it was, how do I put it? It felt like it was helping me. Even if it didn't help anyone else, it was helping me cope. And it took up time because I would always get really, really into what I was doing and really like hyper focus on it. So it would take out a lot of hours of the day. So I didn't feel reliant on someone calling me or trying to keep myself distracted and keep myself positive. Because it wasn't, not being funny, a hospital isn't really a nice place to be in. And even if you're in a recovery ward, so you become very aware that you're sick or you're not unwell or you're not right. And having that with me made me kind of cope better. And it wasn't just the drawing. I would then write about my experience within like the captions and say what happened to kind of get my own head around what happened, because I felt like I'm having a pacemaker fitted and I'm so young. And there was a debate between if I should have one and if I shouldn't, because it has to be redone every 10 years for the rest of your life. I was like, that's a big commitment. And that's why I was so reluctant to have it. I feel like that was when I was, okay, well, if this is how this is going to go, let's turn negative into a positive and try to share the story. If anyone else has to have a pacemaker and they're younger than me, or they're in the same position, so it's kind of like your feelings are valid. So I'm validating other people's feelings of accepting other people, even if I don't know that they're there, because that's what I'd have wanted. I've also always thought the people that have met me when I've always had epilepsy have treated me very differently to the people that knew me before and after, because the people that have known me as just having epilepsy, it's just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, it's not even looked upon. But when the people that you've known for ages, they kind of have this preconceived idea of what you were like. If you were then suddenly overly emotional, or you can't do things that you used to do with them, it can be overwhelming having to continually explain your condition. Sometimes I just want to be like, here's the picture, there you go, look at it. And I don't want to have to keep telling you over and over again. And that's not because I don't appreciate them. Sometimes it's just because I'm so exhausted from having to explain my existence and why it's different and why it's changed and why I am the way I am. I was like, I've been through enough crap. I really don't need this all. It's just another thing. I think sometimes drawing it and being able to be like, yeah, this is how I feel, or this is what I've been going through in my head with a picture and a couple of words that I've written, or the educational images of this is what an aura looks like for a seizure. This is how a focal seizure works. Literally having like the words to explain what it is and how I feel. I don't have to constantly say it. I think is a big weight off my shoulders. The constant explaining is tiring. It's very draining. I think anyone that's had a situation like that will understand when you're like, yes, I have this. Yes, this happens. I'm going through this over again. It's like every time you go to a doctor's appointment and they go, can you tell us your history? And they're like, oh, really? You have to do this? But it's like, shouldn't you know this? I want to turn it with a book and be like, read that, then we'll have a chat. I mean, I understand that. But
Exactly. It's almost like, did you even look what other doctors have said about me? Maybe they are really that busy. I don't know what it's like to be in their shoes, but everything that you're saying right now actually has me thinking of a recording that I did with Andy and a few others last week. Andy, I don't know if this is popping in your head, but we were talking about the importance of having an elevator pitch. One thing that I brought up to them is having a business card. I'm picturing a beautifully designed, because I'm looking at your website, which is gorgeous, by the way. You need a beautiful business card with a QR code to your website and an about you thing so you can hand that over and be like, this is what's going on. And that way, if you are exhausted or you're just tired of talking about it, you can say, here you go. Now they have this beautiful piece of art, but they also have all the information about you as well.
that's a really good idea, actually, the whole elevator pitch thing and doing that. But I think in my head, I'm also a very emotional person. But the idea of going, hi, nice to meet you, there you go, feels very, like, not clinical, but a bit like, they have stuff too. It's not just all about me. And like, they might have stuff that they haven't shared. And I'm a very open, but I think I would overshare, let's be honest. I think sometimes that makes people feel comfortable and sometimes it makes them feel uncomfortable. If it's a person that feels they don't feel comfortable sharing, I'll give them a card. But if it's someone that does feel comfortable sharing, maybe you sometimes have a connection and learn something about something you didn't even know existed. When I think about it, going back to when I thought I might have ADHD, and one of my friends I'd met via my boyfriend, she had ADHD, and we were talking about things. I was like, oh my God, you understand. It's like, you get it. You actually, I was like, but I just wouldn't have thought anyone, I just thought it was me being weird. And then as soon as she kind of accepted the fact that she's like, no, I do that. Oh my God, no, that's not weird. So yeah, but she's like, I do have ADHD though. And I was like, oh, right. And then I was like, it then got me looking into it, which made me more curious as to not why I acted it. And I don't want to be like, oh, I self-diagnosed myself as ADHD, because that's really irritating. But I am also one of those people. Only because when I then went and spoke to my neurologist about it, I said to him, is there a chance I could have ADHD? As like, I've been seeing him for like quite a few years, 3 years or something. And he was like, yeah, probably like 90% of people that have epilepsy end up having ADHD. And I was like, you would have never told me that if I'd have never spoken to her and never had that connection with her. So as much as that's a brilliant idea, especially like at events, to give like an elevator pitch and like hand the card over, I also think that it's important to communicate that, because then you can have some exchanges that are like absolutely brilliant. They've like form amazing friendships to then be like, so like we get each other on a different level because you understand me in a way that no one else could, because they haven't experienced it. And people don't understand really unless they haven't experienced a situation, which I think is brilliant, lovely, but also quite sad at the same time.
I absolutely agree with you. I think there's a time and a place to have an elevator pitch or have a business card to give to someone. But then there's those times where, hey, let's sit down and have coffee and let's chat about this, because it number one, life is about connection, right? We are not meant to live on an island by ourselves. Life is meant to be surrounded by other people and communicating and getting to know each other. And so there's some beauty in sharing our experiences and finding out how many similarities we have and how much we can support each other. And it's almost like you meet someone that's like you and it's, oh, can we be friends? We need to sit down and you can easily sit down and talk to someone for hours. But then there's times where people really do just want to get to know you and to learn more about what's going on with you. They want to better understand it so they can better support you.
Well, I have a question. So you're a personal trainer, and as a personal trainer that's also chronically ill, I want to ask you, what was the hardest thing for you as a trainer, being on the other side of it now, but chronically ill? So going from the gym goer, I refer to myself as a gym rat because I was in there. I was picking up the heavy shit. I was putting it down, right? That's it, gains, let's get them. And then life changed. And then I was like, oh my, I can't do that. I struggled a lot my first, I want to say 6 or so months, because I was so used to being able to do it my old way. What is like one of the things that you learned how to do differently that you would say, I'm so glad I learned how to do it differently because this is way better now?
Really interesting question, actually. I used to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week as a normal. Then obviously when I was diagnosed, I still tried to do that, but then I'd be a lot more tired quicker. I really wanted to become a personal trainer so I could be self-employed and I could pick as and when I worked. So that was so be flexible around me. But 2, I loved it and it made me feel positive about myself. I was genuinely in my happy place was going to the gym, because I felt every time I leave, I'd never left feeling like I had a bad day or I had a bad workout, because it's like, at least I've done something active today. I also felt like all the personal trainers were all the same, and they're all like there was no like personal trainer for someone like me, so that would understand if you cancelled last minute or if you couldn't do X, Y, and Z. It wasn't because you were being a flake and you didn't want to turn up and you couldn't be asked. It'd be like, no, I'm genuinely not okay. I think the main reason I did it is because I wanted to understand myself better, because what you learn in school is really vague when it comes to fitness. It'll just be like, this is how you play football or whatever. And it's like, yeah, cool, great. That doesn't really help me understand it unless you did like some nutrition or anything like that. For me, I wasn't interested in it then, but as I got older, I was. And I was like, I really don't know anything about my body. I don't understand why things might do a certain way, why things work a certain way. So I did it purely for a selfish reason, because I wanted to understand, why does this happen when this happens? Why does this happen when this happens? I found a lot of the the training and the course be very tailored to a certain person. I was like, well, that wouldn't work and that doesn't work and that's not quite true. I was like, you have to do it to pass the training and whatever. It was insightful. I'm not saying it was completely useless, but I'm saying it was for someone that has a chronic illness and also someone who's a woman, you'd be like, okay. Some of it was just a bit. The reason I wanted to learn was because I thought I knew my body well. Then as soon as I got diagnosed with epilepsy, I was like the whole, like you said, dating yourself again. I felt like, okay, I need some information here. I need someone to show me why these things happen and why they don't happen. I've actually found since taking medication, it can fluctuate my weight really, really drastically at points. So I have to be informed on how to help myself in any way that is possible and in an educated way, and just some random person off Instagram or TikTok saying you should eat like 600 carrots or something stupid. Like, you need to know exactly what's right and what's wrong. But then the education from that taught me, okay, that's what is for the general statistic, as it were. And then thinking about tailoring it to myself. But then ironically, I went to go apply for a job at the gym, and they did the classic thing of, you don't fit in what we need from you, which is, even if you're working freelance, you still need to work X amount of hours. And I was like, I can't do that. Even as someone who's self-employed, they're like, yeah, we can't do that. Also taught me the whole, people are still quite brutal. Even if you're there doing a job trying to help people, it's very selfish business thing. I was like, okay, I guess I'll have to work on my own. Even since that point, I have avoided going to the gym, and it's actually caused me more problems, which is ironic because you think a place that's supposed to make people feel good wouldn't reject someone because of a health and fitness thing. And a place that used to be my massive happy place wasn't anymore. I don't like going there anymore, but I'm literally building up to go back just to go to the gym, not even as a personal trainer. But it's a very like a journey that you have. You wouldn't expect it to be like that. I think that's a lot of the things I've learned with doing anything since being diagnosed, or just because I'm getting older. It's what you expect to happen isn't always what's going to happen. And you can have this foolproof plan of, I'm going to be self-employed and I can look after my body and I can help other people in my condition. It's going to be great. You have this full idea, lifestyle. No, that's not for you. You can do whatever else. I still like train and stuff. I mean, not as much as I used to, even with, I don't do it as much. I focus a lot more on the illustration, especially because it's the mental side of things that has changed for me because of that experience. Kind of one kind of filters into the other and helping that one grow. And then hopefully, eventually, it's going to be an even scale. I can't even remember what the question was now. I'm just from a bloody tangent.
No, I don't know that the scale will ever be even, but there'll be more balance. I think we go through life, and every season of life, we just exchange, the different voluntary or involuntary stressors, and that we tilt the scale all day long. The balance changes, but I think as we go through the journey, especially of the dating ourselves and getting to understand us more and what is the trigger and why does my body feel this way only around you, that we learn to exit stage left, and we learn to go, it's okay to say no. And it's, hey, I'm going to love you from a distance because I have to love me a little bit more right now. I struggled with understanding what my identity was as a coach post heart attack, when I could no longer do the thing that gave me my identity, right? So people would see me and be like, hey, coach. And I'm like, ooh, blind deaf, had a whole heart attack. I can't show you how to do that right now. I can't lift that. I can't lift anything over 10 pounds. I can talk you through it. But people started to look at me as if I couldn't do things. And every diagnosis, it was like, what? I'm like, However, in the layers of days where they were bad, and I've had several of those days where they were bad, even as an entrepreneur, I look back at it now and I can see there were bad chunks, but so much good was happening while I was focusing on the, man, why isn't my life just? And then 7 years later, you have someone go, I don't think that you know this, but your life changed mine. And just the little things that you choose to share. And so, yeah, we don't always see it when we're going through it. We don't always see it. The strength that comes from saying, hey, this is me now. And it doesn't look like it always did, but I'm okay with me now. That acceptance portion is huge, because the minute you go, I'm not who I once was, but I'm not who I'm going to be yet. And I'm okay with where I am right now. And I need you to be okay with it too. People look at you differently. You command a room differently. They accept you in a whole different way because it's no longer, can I convince you to accept yourself? Can I convince you to accept that your normal may look a little bit different, but say that's slathered in so much pity? And you're like, you don't have to tell me that because I already know that my normal is different. Yeah.
Subtly, I did all of that. As in the whole sitting back and like, you know when to leave and you know when to stay and you know when you need to love people at a distance and all that. It's very relevant for anyone that's been through like a major traumatic situation. And also, I understand what you mean when you feel like, when I used to be going to the gym, I lift so much more, and it was like happy place and comfort place. I feel like that deteriorated slightly because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, like I didn't get out of bed for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks at all since when I had a pacemaker fitted. And then I went back and I was like, I'm so weak, I can't do it. I was like, how can I call myself a personal trainer if I can't even do it? And there's so much of that doubt within yourself. And when you said you need to have that confidence within yourself to then share it or, tell people or be confident that you know that you're in the place that you need to be and you're learning from, I don't know, past you and current you, that is a really powerful thing to do. Because like you said, once you have confidence and you know yourself and you can command a room, it's like, I feel like it sounds horrible, but it's like, it's happened for a reason because this has all kind of come together. And some things are bad and they happen and you can't really put a nice spin on it. But sometimes I think one of the ways that I cope with it is thinking, what have I learned from this, or what can I learn from this, and try to put that positive spin and try to be positive within myself. And this is coming from a person that is ridiculously negative and have never been able to take a compliment ever. I find it difficult if anyone says like, you look nice. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I'm like really awkward. But I feel like weirdly having the epilepsy and having to redate myself as an adult, which I think I was going to say most people do, but I don't know that because I kind of put it down to the epilepsy. That's when that pivotal moment happened. That I feel like it's just all kind of weirdly come together at the right time. I'm not saying, well, it's fucking great right now, because it's not. And let's be honest, there's always going to be a bit shitty bits and good bits, but I think I put so much pressure on myself for everything to be perfect all at once and for me to be okay straight away and for everything to go back to how it was straight away. And it's the realization of, no, scrap that plan. Let's make a new plan, which is to see how things go and accept you for you instead of trying to waltz you back into the old version, which, to be honest, was younger, more naive, and had less empathy of understanding of this whole thing that you've been through. And it's amazing to kind of see that kind of transformation, especially like I worked in a care home for like 6 years as a receptionist, and people are like, oh gosh, I used to think people would judge me for that job a lot because I was like, it was only supposed to be an intermittent job between university and then starting my career. But then my career never happened because I got epilepsy. Then I changed what the version of career meant because I then decided what I wanted to do, which is to start my own business. But equally, from that job, I learned so much because the people that you meet, the stories that you hear, and the understanding of what people have been through in life, and let's just say the average person was 80 years old, and I could relate to them in terms of a doctor's appointment or what medication they were on, things like that. I'm like, that's weird. But then also the reason I'm so good at this job is because I have that understanding. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have epilepsy. I wouldn't have been in the hospital and seen one of the residents walking through being like, oh yeah? It's like, oh, yeah, pacemaker. Just, yeah, me too. Weird. Like, that wouldn't have happened.
That's so true. I have so many conversations, like, want to see scars? But I think that I am a better trainer and a better coach because now I'm like, you're not functionally moving your body. And how do I know you're not functionally moving your body? I live in chronic pain. I don't want you to live there. And I think that we make better, I'm going to say it, we make better trainers because our bodies attack itself all day. And so we're like, there might be a more efficient way to do that where you can work the same muscle group without the injury that may come from you doing it incorrectly because you want to pick up heavy shit and put it down. Right. So I learned so much. And so now the the young athletes that I work with, I'm like, hey, I see you. I know you want to go hard. You want to do all of this. You want to get all these gains. I get it. What I need you to do is pace you so that you can actually reap all the benefits of doing this, right? It forced me to slow down enough for me to understand and enjoy my process, but also be able to relate that to the generation that is watching me. Like, I can't rush the journey if I'm telling you not to rush the journey. And while you're going to be frustrated, I got to sit with them and explain to them, I understand your frustration because I live your frustration. And while you are trying to get stronger, coach is trying to get stronger with you. So I understand your frustration because I live it, but I live it for a different reason. And here's why. So it got to open up all of these conversations. I live it for a different reason. Here is why. Now, you may know that I have these health things. This is what it did to my body. This is what it did to my muscles. But before these diagnoses, I was an athlete that was going hard in the paint that wouldn't sit down. Then my body sat me down, and now I'm recovering from being the athlete in my youth and trying to actually learn how to live in my body now. And I'm trying to prevent you from having the things that you don't need to have because you won't sit down and pace. Now, I didn't. I was so angry at all of the diagnosis. And now I look at it and go, wait a minute, I needed to sit down. I needed to sit down so that I could teach our TikTok generation. There are people around you that don't look like you, that are carrying stuff that you may never know. And while we are bullying each other and we are being keyboard warriors and we're doing all of these things, I don't look sick. I'm your coach. I don't look sick. Here's what I got going on, guys. Then it's like, whoa, but you would have never seen that coming. So be kind because it's free. It's free. And you don't know what the person next to you is carrying. We're all carrying something heavy at any given day. But it wasn't until recently where my body and my mind accepted you are this part of your journey because this was meant for you. This was for you to change the narrative of what sick looks like and continue to change the narrative because I don't look sick and Emma, you don't look sick and Jen doesn't look sick and we're out here. So maybe we're the normal. You see what I'm saying? Why do we go, but I'm sick? Maybe we're the normal and everyone else is the weirdos, but we assume that we're the weirdos. What if everyone else was the weirdos? What if the spoonies were the normal ones and everyone else is the weirdos?
That is a really good way of putting it because honestly, we are all carrying something. We are all carrying a load, but not everyone is brave enough to share it. I'm looking at the time, guys. We could go for hours. Emma, I think we're going to have to schedule a part 2. If you're up for it, we're going to do it. Before we close out, congratulations on co-authoring Beyond the Ordinary. Can you tell us a little bit about it before we close?
Yes, I can. Yeah, Beyond the Ordinary is 30 different women. They've all written a chapter within the book. And each one is talking about their experience of neurodiversity and how they even got there, if they'd always had it. But it can be from their journey from like abuse, addiction. In my case, it was being diagnosed with epilepsy. And there's a whole range of people from different ages. It's all talking about their unique experience as to how creativity helped them cope with something that was traumatic or life-changing. And a lot of the people in the book actually sell at the shop that I sell my stuff in England. And they've all had completely different life experiences, but they all make something because it brings them joy and helps them deal with something like ADHD, which could be the normal, to be honest. It helps them cope. So it's everyone's little snippet of, like you said, Andy, about you wouldn't expect that person would have gone through that. Like, there's a person that I worked with for 2 years. And she was one that said, oh, do you want to be part of the book? I was like, yeah, sure. I'd love to do that. Like, she read my chapter and she was like, I had no idea you had been through all of that. I was like, yeah, no, why would you? I read her chapter and I was like, bloody hell. Like, there's just so much that people don't know because it's not really always a place to share it, but the book is a lovely place to start to help understand people's stories, to learn how to empathize with other people, and to show that creativity is a brilliant way to also bring people together, but also show that it's a brilliant way to cope with things that can be difficult. That's what I love about it as being part of it. Also, just it was a joy to write for me because it was therapeutic in itself to write it. So you realize how much you've been through and how resilient I've been, because as soon as you write it all down, you're like, fuck, I've been through all that. yeah, I actually am what all these my friends say I am. Oh, you're doing well. You are resilient. You've like dealt with a lot. But until you write it all down, you're there going, no, it's just another day. It's just another day. But it's a lot to deal with. And there's people that haven't been through things like a lot of people in the book have been through. It's the fact that those people still get up every day and do something. And you're there like, yeah, I'm actually pretty good. I'm pretty proud of myself, because not everyone could do that. You know, it's kind of a celebration and of the fact that people have been through a lot of stuff and are still managing to move forward in a way that makes them happy. Really, that's a really cringy way to put it, but that's how I feel about it. I can show you enough. This is what it looks like.
Beautiful. You are not cringy whatsoever.
Sorry.
I love the colors. I love everything about that.
It's gorgeous. We are going to share in the show notes how people can get a copy, get in touch with you, see all the things, do all the things. But I'm telling you right now, book it. We're going to do a second episode because we need it. Thank you for your time, and Andy for joining. I cannot wait to chat with you both again. And everyone out there, until next time, don't forget your spoon. All guests featured or mentioned in this podcast will be listed for your convenience. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to My Spoonie Sisters and follow My Spoonie Sisters on Instagram for updates on new episodes and more. We eagerly look forward to speaking and hearing from all our Spoonies. Disclaimer: while we are not doctors or healthcare practitioners, we want to assure you that this podcast is a credible source of information. It's based on our guests' personal experiences and the strategies we've found effective for ourselves. However, everyone's body is unique, and what works for one person may not work for another. If you have any health-related questions, it's always best to consult your primary doctor or rheumatologist. Remember, our goal at My Spoonie Sisters is to connect people and provide them with the support and tools they need to live better lives.